People always say family takes care of their own. But sometimes family is the very reason you learn how to survive pain in silence. This is a story about my daughter, Sophie. She was just 15 when this happened. And it all started with one careless moment in the kitchen, on the night of my mother's birthday. What followed after that changed everything. Not just for me, but for Sophie too. Sophie had been helping with dinner like she always does, when she spilled boiling sauce across the back of her hand. It was a second-degree burn. She tried to hold back tears, tried to do everything right. But when she told the adults around her that she was hurt, do you know what they said? My own mother told her she could just stir with the other hand. And then they made her finish cooking for 18 people. By the time I found out, hours had passed. And when I tell you I didn't scream, I didn't shout, I didn't even slam a single door. I simply smiled. 3 hours later, I had 53 missed calls. And I keep replaying that smile in my head. The calm, polite, everything's fine smile I wore when I opened the door to my mother's house and stepped straight into a room that, for about 5.5 seconds, looked like a perfectly normal family gathering. The smell of garlic butter hit me first. The kind of smell that lingers in the air and almost convinces you something wonderful is happening. The house was crowded, siblings, cousins, kids running through the hallway hopped up on soda and cake. The adults had their wine glasses, pretending not to judge each other. My mother, Linda, was by the stove, holding a wooden spoon like she was some kind of artist finishing her final masterpiece. She spread a heavy orange-brown sauce across a tray of lasagna, while my dad stood next to her, nodding as if he was part of the show. And everything looked normal, which is exactly how I knew something was wrong. Because Sophie wasn't there. Now, Sophie isn't the kind of kid who has to be the center of attention. She's not loud, she's not showing off, she's not the one doing cartwheels in the front yard. She's steady, always around, always helping. Folding napkins, pouring drinks, answering politely when one of her uncles cracks an awkward joke about boyfriends. She's always present, which meant her absence screamed. So I asked casually at first, "Where's Sophie?" My niece looked up from her phone and shrugged. Said Sophie wasn't feeling well, went to lie down. My brother added something about how she'd been running around all afternoon. Someone laughed, said maybe she was just being moody. My cousin smirked and joked. She's probably having one of those dramatic teenage days. And my mother? She rolled her eyes, waved her hand like I'd asked if the queen was attending dinner. She's fine, Linda said. Teenagers can be so dramatic. And that's when I should have stopped smiling. I should have dropped the cake I was holding, run down the hallway, and found my daughter. But I didn't. I kept that light laugh, said something like, "I'll go check on her," and handed the cake off to my sister. The hallway was loud, voices from the kitchen echoing behind me. But the door to the guest room was shut. I knocked softly. "Sophie." Silence, then a soft rustle. "Mom." That one word told me everything. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. Fragile. Small. So unlike my girl, who usually drips sarcasm with one raised eyebrow. I opened the door. She was curled up at the edge of the bed, pressing a cold water bottle against her left hand. Her face blotchy, eyes glassy, her right hand trembling as she tried to keep that bottle steady. "Sweetheart, what happened?" "I burned it." Her voice was flat, drained. I sat beside her, gently taking the bottle away. The skin across the back of her hand was angry red, already blistering, clear bubbles rising around her knuckles. "How long ago?" She shrugged. "A while." "How long is a while?" "I don't know. 2 hours? Maybe more." My chest went cold. "You didn't tell anyone?" "I did." Her voice cracked. "I told Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Marie and Uncle Nick. I told them all." I swallowed hard. "And what did they say?" She blinked. "They said I was being dramatic. That I just didn't want to help." And then came the sentence. The one that would later snap in my mind like a trap. "Grandma said I could stir with my other hand." I stood up. The decision was already made in my bones. We were leaving. Because no family dinner, no birthday celebration, is worth my daughter's skin blistering in silence. I helped Sophie slide her hoodie sleeve over her hand, careful not to let the fabric scrape her burned skin. She winced but didn't complain. Together we walked down the hallway, past the bathroom, past the staircase, past the sound of Linda's laughter floating from the kitchen like steam. No one noticed us. Not one person looked up. We stepped outside, and the cool air hit like a truth no one wanted to face. I got Sophie in the car. My hand shook when I started the engine, but I kept my voice steady, calm, because the last thing I wanted was for her to feel my panic. I drove fast, but not too fast. Just fast enough to get her where she needed to be. When we got to the ER, the triage nurse didn't waste a second. She looked at Sophie's hand and immediately called for a doctor. Within half a minute, there were medical terms flying around: infection risk, possible scarring, delayed treatment. They bandaged her hand carefully, explained what to do, gave us prescriptions and instructions for follow-up care. And then one of the nurses, speaking quietly but clearly, asked me the question I didn't want to answer. Why didn't anyone bring her in sooner? And how do you answer that? How do you explain to a stranger that your child was surrounded by a room full of adults, her own relatives, while her skin bubbled and burned, and not a single one of them thought she deserved medical attention? How do you explain that your mother, the woman who plastered Sophie's baby photos all over Facebook, told her to stir pasta with the other hand? How do you explain that Sophie didn't even cry until we were in the car, because she didn't want to ruin her grandmother's birthday? I couldn't answer. Not in words. I just stood there and let the silence tell the story. We left the ER with a bag of supplies, a prescription, and a folder of instructions. My phone buzzed the moment we stepped outside. One missed call, then another, then 6, then 13. The messages started rolling in. Where are you? Is everything okay? Did Sophie leave with you? Mom's asking. We're cutting the cake soon. I didn't respond. By the time we got home, I had 53 missed calls, and not a single one of them was an apology. I tucked Sophie into bed, her hand wrapped in gauze like something too fragile to touch. She was quiet, calm, almost too calm. And as I stood there watching her try to sleep through the pain, something inside me cracked. See, they say your childhood shapes who you are. And mine? Mine shaped my pain tolerance. And not in some poetic self-help book kind of way. I mean literally. My body learned not to react. Stubbed toes? Shake it off. Fever? Still go to school. Sprained wrist at 12, dragging laundry up the stairs? Still cook dinner that night. That was my shaping. That was my normal. I used to think it made me tough, strong, able to handle anything. But standing in that watching a nurse carefully bandage my daughter's hand while she sat there quiet, obedient, and utterly defeated, I realized something much uglier. I hadn't just inherited that tolerance for pain. I had passed it down. Because Sophie didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't demand help. She stayed polite. She stayed invisible. Just like I used to. And the truth is, I know exactly where it started. I was the oldest of 3. My sister came 2 years after me, my brother 2 years after that. I was 4 years older than both, which meant I was born at the wrong time. My mom, Linda, got pregnant with me at 19, married my dad at 20, and she never stopped blaming me for both. She used to say I rushed her into adulthood, like my existence ruined something sacred. By the time my siblings came along, life had gotten easier. Dad got a raise. They bought a house with a yard, new dishwasher, backyard barbecues, camcorder birthdays. But for me, the damage was already done. I was the unpaid third parent, the invisible one. I don't even remember the first time I was told to help out. It wasn't a moment. It was the air I breathed. Bathe your sister. Watch your brother. Make dinner. Do homework. Don't whine. Don't complain. No thank you. Just more tasks. I remember being in 6th grade, running a fever so high I could barely stand. I told my mom I didn't think I could go to school. She sighed, rolled her eyes, and said, "Well, I still have to go to work, don't I?" That was the end of it. I went to school. I threw up behind a tree at recess. I got in trouble for not participating in gym. And I remember thinking vividly, maybe if I faint, someone will finally care. Not because I wanted to scare anyone, but because I had learned one brutal lesson. If the suffering wasn't public, it didn't count. Fast forward to high school. I wanted to be a doctor. I loved science, loved the idea of solving mysteries inside the human body. I shadowed a pediatrician for a week, and I came home glowing. I told my mom, "I think I want to be a doctor." She laughed. Not kindly, just laughed. That's not for people like us. People like us meant working class. Meant not smart enough, not rich enough, not worth the investment. She told me nursing was more realistic, practical, Still helping people. Always helping. So I applied for nursing school, community program, scholarships, grants, weekend jobs to make it work. No one helped me fill out applications. No one bought me a laptop. No one even asked how classes were going. But they sure love telling people, our daughter's a nurse. Meanwhile, my sister got ballet lessons. My brother got writing camps and film school tours. They didn't have to earn support. It was handed to them on a silver plate. And to be fair, they weren't cruel. They just didn't question it. Why would they? I was always the helper, the fixer, the one who kept things running. And the irony? I earn more than both of them now. By a lot. But I still get texts like, can you help with back-to-school shopping? Can you look at mom's knees? Can you check out this weird rash on my kid's arm? I'm the family ATM, the walking Google search bar, the unpaid doctor, always with a smile, always helping. Until that night. Back in the hospital, Sophie sat quietly as the doctor explained the treatment. She flinched when the nurse touched her hand but still whispered, thank you. When we got home, I made her tea, tucked her in with Netflix and a weighted blanket. Finally, she let out a shaky breath and whispered, it hurts more now. I nodded. That's because someone finally noticed. She looked at me for a long moment, then asked, Mom, can I tell you something? Of course. I think I want to go into medicine, like be a doctor. I've always wanted to. But I thought maybe I'd do nursing instead. My heart stopped. Why? She shrugged, eyes on the blanket. Because we're not rich. And you're a nurse. And you're amazing. I just thought maybe that's more realistic. And in that second, I saw myself at 15 again, watching my mother laugh, saying, that's not for people like us. And I saw myself shrink. I wasn't going to let Sophie shrink too. So I didn't cry. I didn't make a big speech. I just said, you can be whatever the hell you want. And I'll find a way to get you there. But in my mind, I was already building the road. The first thing I cut was the money. Not the loudest move I've ever made, but definitely the quietest. No announcements, no arguments, no late-night texts. Just a few clicks on my banking app, and a short confirmation email that the automatic transfers were done. It was like unplugging a machine I'd been powering for years, and finally hearing silence. After that, I wrote one sentence to my mother. Just one. I won't be available for therapy sessions anymore. Please follow up with a licensed provider. I didn't expect a thank you. I didn't even expect acknowledgement. But I also didn't expect what came next, the emotional equivalent of a nuclear detonation. 15 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Linda. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Oh, now you have time to answer, she said, her voice sharp. No, I said softly. I have time to say hello. Silence. Then she scoffed. Is this about the money? Or the medical help? I leaned against the counter, looking out the window. Both. I'm your mother, she snapped. I'm in pain and you're a nurse. You've always helped me. I let the words hang there. And then I said the thing I'd been practicing in the mirror. You made Sophie stir pasta with a second-degree burn. That's not what happened. She fired back immediately. No one even knew she was hurt that badly. She told you 3 times. I thought she was exaggerating. There it was. No regret. No apology. Just the same old story dressed up in fresh excuses. She's 15, I reminded her. And I'm 62 and can't sleep because of back pain, Linda shot back. I thought we were family. I breathed out slowly. You told her to stir with her other hand. The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Finally, she muttered, you're punishing us over one little misunderstanding. No, I said calmly. I'm just not pretending anymore. And I hung up. I half expected the guilt parade to roll into my driveway the next morning. Balloons, cards, maybe even a fruit basket saying, sorry you grew a backbone. But nothing came. Just silence. And for the first time in years I had time. Actual honest time. I took Sophie out for coffee on a school night. We curled up on the couch with fuzzy socks and trash TV, ice packs on her healing hand. I went to bed before midnight. I woke up without dread. Felt almost wrong. Like I'd accidentally stepped into someone else's life. Then, of course, the group chat lit up. Linda got there first, as always. We're being cut off. Sophie never said she was hurt. She just said she was tired. We thought she wanted to lie down. We didn't know anything was wrong. I've been in so much pain lately, and now my daughter won't even speak to me, even though she's a nurse. I stared at the screen, my stomach turning. She left out the part where they laughed at Sophie, where they told her she was lazy, where they handed her a hot pan and called it teaching a lesson. She left out the part where Sophie cooked for 2 hours with blistered skin because she didn't want to ruin Grandma's birthday. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I didn't want to give a speech. I didn't want to waste more words. So instead, I posted a photo. It was Sophie's hand, fully bandaged, the hospital logo visible in the corner. And then I typed, "She told you 3 times. You laughed. You told her to stir with the other hand. She cooked with a 2nd-degree burn. That's why we left." The chat froze. One cousin left a thumbs up. Another quietly exited the group. Hours passed. I thought maybe finally the dust had settled. And then came the message I didn't expect. It was from my aunt, my mom's sister, the one who usually stayed out of everything. "I didn't want to get involved," she wrote, "but I was there. I heard what they said. They gave Sophie that hot dish on purpose. Said it would teach her to be more careful. Then they laughed. They didn't think she'd really get hurt. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But instead, I smiled. Not a happy smile. Not even a relieved one. Just the kind of smile you give when you finally know you weren't crazy. When your instincts were right. When you realize it really was that bad. That they really did think pain was a teaching tool. And someone else finally said it out loud. The real earthquake came 3 weeks later. Not from my mother. Not from my siblings. Not even from the endless group chat that had slowly gone from rage to silence. It came from my grandmother. She called me one morning, her voice steady in a way that instantly put me on edge. "I need you and Sophie to come over," she said. "And bring nothing but yourselves." I didn't argue. I just said, "We'll be there in 20. When we arrived, Grandma Margaret was sitting at the old oak dining table with a folder in front of her. No coffee, no small talk, no cookies cooling on the counter like usual. Just papers. She slid them toward me. I changed my will. I blinked. "Grandma." She cut me off with one raised hand. "Listen. I've been watching. I've been quiet too long. And I won't leave this world without setting things straight. You need to know where everything stands." I glanced down. The pages were legal documents. Black ink, bold headers, official signatures. And my name right there, next to Sophie's. "They won't get anything," Grandma said flatly. "Not a dime. Not the house, not the land, not the bank accounts. It all goes to you and Sophie, because you're the only ones who've ever shown me love without strings attached." I felt the air catch in my chest. "Grandma, that's not why I know," she interrupted again. "That's why it's you." Sophie sat there wide-eyed, her bandaged hand resting on her lap. She whispered, "But what about Mom? And Uncle Nick? And everybody else?" Grandma's mouth tightened. "They've shown me who they are. I gave them chance after chance and all they did was take. They took from me. They took from your mother. And they took from you, Sophie. No more." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her this was too much, too final. But deep down I knew she was right. And of course word got out. It didn't even take 48 hours before my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. First from Linda. Then from my brother. Then from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. "You poisoned her against us. You manipulated Grandma. You've been scheming for years. Greedy little snake." I ignored every single one. But then came the inevitable knock on Grandma's front door. We were sitting in her living room, watching an old black and white movie when it started. Loud. Aggressive. No polite tap. Just fists pounding like they owned the house already. Margaret didn't even flinch. She turned up the volume on the TV. But Sophie looked scared. Her eyes darted toward me. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to see. There they were. My mother. My brother. 2 cousins standing behind them like backup singers in some cheap band. All of them red-faced, vibrating with fury. "We need to talk," Linda snapped. "No," I said calmly. "You need to leave. You think you're so special now, don't you?" She spat. "Hiding behind Grandma. Taking what isn't yours. Turning my own mother against me." And then a new voice cut through. "Against you." Margaret's voice boomed from behind me. "You did that all by yourself." The room froze. Grandma walked up, leaning on her cane but standing taller than I'd seen her in years. You let my great-granddaughter suffer. You told her to stir with her other hand while her skin was burning. Do you know how many nights I've lain awake thinking about that? Linda opened her mouth, but Grandma raised her cane and pointed it right at her. No, not one more word. You don't get to play victim here. Not when you laughed at her pain. My brother tried to jump in, muttering something about misunderstandings. Grandma shut him down with one sharp look. This house, this land, everything I've built. It goes to the ones who still know what love means. And it sure isn't you. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, like the whole house itself was holding its breath. Finally, Linda hissed, "You'll regret this." But Grandma only smiled, calm and unshaken. "No, I'll finally rest easy." And with that, I closed the door. On the other side, voices exploded, shouts, curses, threats. But inside, in that warm living room with its faded curtains and old movie humming on the TV, it was quiet, peaceful. Sophie leaned against me, whispering, "Did that really just happen?" "Yes," I whispered back. "It really did." And for the first time in my life, I felt like the cycle had been broken. The storm didn't end in one night. The messages kept coming. The group chat turned into a firing squad, then into radio silence, then into a trickle of half-hearted attempts to pull me back in. First it was rage. "You're selfish. You're cruel. You're ungrateful." Then it was pity. "We know you're overwhelmed. We forgive you. Come home." And finally it was guilt. "Family is all you have. Without us, you'll be alone." But here's the thing. I wasn't alone. I had Sophie. I had Grandma. I had a small, quiet life where nobody called me at midnight demanding I fix their broken world. Where love didn't have to be earned by bleeding for it. It was strange, adjusting to peace. The first time I slept through the night without my phone buzzing, I woke up panicked, convinced I'd missed some emergency. But there was nothing. Just sunlight through the blinds and Sophie humming in the kitchen while making pancakes one-handed. The first time I sat on my couch with a book and nobody barged in asking for money, I kept looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next blow. But it never came. And slowly, I realized this was what life was supposed to feel like. Not constant crisis. Not endless sacrifice. Not love as a transaction. Just love. Simple. Quiet. Real. Sophie healed. The burn left a scar, faint but visible if you looked close enough. She used to stare at it sometimes, her face unreadable. One day I asked her if it bothered her. She shook her head. "No," she said. "It reminds me that I survived." And I realized so did I. Grandma's health declined over the next year. Not in a dramatic, tragic way. Just the slow, natural fading of someone who's lived long and hard and is finally ready to rest. We spent as much time with her as we could. Sophie baked cookies. I handled her medications and made sure she never missed a doctor's appointment. When she passed, it was peaceful. She left behind a house full of old photographs, stacks of crossword puzzles, and a will that made sure Sophie and I would never struggle again. The funeral was tense. My mother was there. My brother too. They didn't look at me. They didn't speak. And for once I didn't feel the urge to fix it. Because here's the truth. Not every story ends with reconciliation. Not every wound gets healed. Some people never change. But I did. And so did Sophie. Now, when I look at her, I don't just see a girl who got burned by a family too selfish to notice. I see someone who knows her worth. Someone who learned, maybe too young, that you don't have to stay where you're not safe. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see the tired, hollow version of myself who thought love meant saying yes until I collapsed. I see someone who finally learned how to say no. Breaking cycles doesn't feel heroic. It doesn't feel like fireworks or victory speeches. Most days it feels like silence. Like peace. Like drinking coffee without your stomach twisting. Like watching a teenager laugh without worrying who's going to hurt her next. And that's enough. Maybe that's all it was ever supposed to be.